intros to all of these videos are the same, so if you've already heard my spiel, go ahead and skip to the topic for the day. Everything here is just my opinion and it comes from my own personal understanding of the game. So if you disagree with anything here, I'd actually love to hear about it. So yeah, feel free to send me a message. I wanted to create a series of videos helping newer warriors or just newer players to the game understand different ways that they could add value to their team. I consider a newer warrior to be someone who is just starting to play in competitive games, but whose tech isn't super refined yet. So maybe they missed a couple of J's, maybe they can't stick yet, or they're just not confident sticking in general, and just overall their flying is not super clean. So if your flying isn't super clean, what that'll translate to is that when engaging in one-on-one battles or just military battles in general, you're probably not going to be super successful. And because of that, that generally means that in order to be effective for your team, you have to find other ways to add value. That isn't to say that these aren't things that you will do as you become a better warrior. I think each of these things is important to do, but in general, these are things that you should probably focus on while you're still newer to being a warrior. The last thing I'll say before diving into today's topic is I'll be talking in a lot of absolutes. I'll be saying things like you should do this, you shouldn't do this, etc. But there are, like any other competitive video game or sport, there's exceptions to every rule. Really, the aim is to understand the fundamentals and core concepts, and then making conscious decisions on when you want to deviate away from them. Today's topic is going to be adding value by stopping the enemy from forming. The first thing that I want to say is that stopping a warrior from forming is effectively almost the same amount of value add as actually killing a warrior. So it should be seen as equally as important. Before we go into like how much value you're actually adding by stopping a warrior from getting up, I wanted to deviate from the topic slightly and then talk a little bit about awareness. So one of the biggest pitfalls that I see newer players have is that they pay way too much attention to the enemy queen. So the reason that I even want to talk about stopping warriors from forming is that this is a situation that I've seen like multiple times, probably every single time that I play, which is we'll be blue here, and something like this will happen where let's say like it's in the middle of the game or whatever. The queens are battling here. This is an enemy gate. This is an enemy gate, and this is your gate. And you've come here and you've just formed. You become a warrior, and then this will be a scenario where right now, right as you form, to me it's pretty obvious like what the highest value thing to do is. It's to stop this warrior from forming. But a lot of times, like newer players, even when they're forming and you have like a couple of like a second or two to like assess the map and see what's going on, the immediate reaction for newer players is to see what the enemy queen is doing and then to go shadow that queen. I would say for newer players, like one of the least important things for you to do is to just follow around the enemy queen, but it happens way too much. So before we even get to the topic of like stopping warriors from getting up, the thing that I really wanted to mention was for most newer players, you should be looking at the enemy queen much less, and as you're forming or as you're becoming a warrior, you should be looking at the rest of the map to see what else you can affect in order to add value. Another really common thing that I'll see is that new players' understanding of what it means to stop the enemy from forming is basically just to hover over a gate that's not their color. And a lot of times, newer players will do this like indefinitely until someone on their team says, go do something else. Right? So, another important aspect of this game to understand is the amount of value that you add at any given time by performing any action is based on what the rest of the map looks like. So to illustrate that point, let's just look at a couple of different scenarios and talk about the amount of value that you're adding by guarding a gate. So let's say the situation's like this, where their team has 3 warriors already formed and 1 person riding the snail. Now, obviously, you're adding very little value by hovering over this gate because they don't need to form on that gate. Likewise, there could be a scenario like this where maybe there's 2 warriors here. One of your teammates is already covering this gate. They have a drone that is looking to get up, and this is you over here hovering over here. Again, you coming to this gate is again like very little value add because there's someone already guarding that gate. You don't want to clump together and then do the same thing on the map. And so like scenarios in which is like pretty high value is maybe they have 2 drones trying to come up. They're both around this gate. Obviously, this is a pretty high value add because you are actually stopping the drones from doing something. So all this is really simple, but really the point to get across here in recognizing these situations is when you are trying to stop a warrior from forming by guarding a gate, you really need to be able to be aware of what targets you're actually trying to stop from getting up. If you're unable to identify targets and you're only covering a gate because you think this is your job, then you're not aware of how much value you're adding at any given time. So my recommendation is that when you're guarding a gate trying to stop someone from getting up, you should be identifying the targets that you're actually trying to affect. So in this case, it's this guy. But if he wasn't here, then if there is no target that you're trying to affect, then you're effectively not really adding any value. So another big reason why you want to identify a target that you're trying to stop is because your awareness of what that player is doing allows you to like manipulate that target in certain ways. So a really common kill that I'll get that is like very, very low risk is a situation in which maybe I'm here or something. I've identified my target. I'm trying to get up on left gate as being this drone. A lot of times, like I'll be here or whatever. This drone will see me. They'll have the awareness to understand what I'm trying to do. A lot of times you can actually bait these drones into still going for these gates by just sort of moving and pretending that you're doing something else. The moment you start to move, they'll think, okay, well, this gate is free. They just like lost track of me. I'm going to go to the gate. The moment they go to the gate, then you can capitalize and then stop them from getting up. You get an easy kill and you delay their team for a couple seconds. So and the only way that you're able to do that is to identify the target, and then you're trying to bait them into doing something that you want them to do. If you're not identifying any targets on the map, it's very hard for you to have an understanding of what you're actually trying to achieve. So my recommendation is if you're trying to stop some people from forming by guarding a gate, you have to actually identify who you're trying to stop. So another big reason that you need to identify the target that you're trying to stop is because the amount of value that you add is based on what you're trying to stop. And all of your decisions are going to be based on if I'm doing a certain action, is that higher value than me doing a different action? So an example here is if you're stopping this drone from getting up and you're both vanilla warriors, it's hard to say how much value you're actually adding. It could be a lot, or it might not be. It just really depends on what else is happening on the rest of the map. But another way to think about this is if you're a vanilla warrior, they're a vanilla drone, and you're stopping them from getting up at this map, effectively both teams are losing 20% of their workforce. So this is like a moderate value add, and maybe if this is the best player on their team and you're the third warrior on your team, like this might be a good trade. But it might not be. Like that's really up for you to decide based on everything else that you're looking at. Likewise, if this drone was a speed drone, it's probably, and you're a vanilla warrior, you should probably stay here. If you are a speed warrior and this is a vanilla drone, then the decision becomes a little bit more tricky. Maybe you do want to hold them out because that is like the most effective use of your time, but maybe it's not. And really, the only way to know that is to play the game more and really get a feel for what these sort of time trades mean. Another really common scenario, especially on day, is a situation where maybe the other team is locked out or they're just trying to get a couple warriors up because you have a warrior advantage. Maybe it'll look something like this. Again, this is you. The job here right now, if you're trying to stop this drone from getting up, is you want to be able to. Well, there's a couple different scenarios. One is if you anticipate this scenario early, you want to get on both sides of the gate in order to stop drones from coming in before they actually get to the gate. A lot of times, what I'll see is like clumping on one side. They'll maybe there's like three warriors. This queen is shadowing this queen, or whatever, and people just sort of wait around and they wait around for a drone to come all the way through the wrap to get to about here, and then each player is thinking like, okay, once this drone gets to the gate, I'm just going to try to stop them as they get into the gate. Early anticipation of what is happening allows you get to stop this drone with much less risk, right? If this drone is over here and you know it's going through the wrap, and this is you here and your teammates are already on this side, just safely go to the other side. And by safely, this is a really long path. A shorter path is this one. You're probably not going to be killed by the queen because they don't want to leave this gate. You might be, but that's like sort of a trade that is dependent on like what that queen sees. But overall, the gist of it is you should be trying to get around to the other side to affect more space. By coming around to the other side of the queen, you're controlling more of the map, right? Before, everyone was only controlling the right side of this gate. Now you have control of the left side, the right side, and really the only thing that gold has is this middle gate. This drone comes around, and then now it's your job to try to stop this drone. The other situation is if this, if your recognition of the situation is too late and everybody else is on one side. This drone actually gets here, and a common thing that you'll see is someone is going to sacrifice at this gate to take out this drone. So the only thing I have to say about this scenario is, a lot of situations someone should sacrifice themselves on this drone. Again, it's going to be dependent on the composition of the map. If you have three warriors up and they're locked out, they have no warriors up, whatever, you should probably try to stop that drone. If you're last and this is a vanilla drone, maybe not. Like, it really depends on what's going on. But the only other thing to talk about in this scenario is you need to be able to communicate what you're doing in this situation. Too much of the time, players on the team see the same thing, and they both want to do the same thing. And if you're both here and this queen dies, like, you're going to trade 2 for 1, which is a really bad trade. So there's an easy way to stop that, which is just communicate what you're doing to your team. And honestly, if you're the third warrior, if you're like the newest warrior on the team, you're a vanilla warrior, or you're just like not as effective as the other warriors, this should be you. You should be the one that is sacrificing your life in order to stop this drone. So really, like, if you recognize the situation, you're gonna go stop the drone. Tell your team you're stopping the drone, and allow them to stay high or go do something else.